From Dr. Jack Doc Birdwhistle's class of 1968, our next honoree is Reverend Susan Lockwood. A 1968 graduate of Georgetown College, Susan became known as a Troubler of Zion during her years on this campus. That moniker followed her throughout her career and even today. Reverend Lockwood began ordained ministry in 1983 as one of only 4 women senior pastors in the Southern Baptist Convention. She faced open and often angry opposition, yet continued the pioneering work for women in ministry. She has a history of working collaboratively with the disenfranchised of all stripes. Reverend Susan Lockwood has served as senior pastor to churches in Chicago, Gainesville, Georgia, and Nyack, Connecticut. Following September 11, 2001, she served as the American Baptist Coordinator for 9/11 Response in New York City, and later as Director of New York Disaster, Interfaith Services in New York City, and churches in Kentucky, Illinois, Florida, New York, and Ohio have been beneficiaries of Susan Lockwood's pastoral, chaplaincy, and counselor gifts. Reverend Lockwood retired in 2012, but continues to do pulpit supply and be a troubler of Zion whenever needed. Susan is married to Bruce Landis, and they have 3 adult children and 4 grandchildren.
I've had a lot of influences, or people who've been influential in my life. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Clarence Jordan, a lot of people who've been activists, and mainly people who put together faith and action. But I think the people who have had the greatest influence on my life have been my parents. And my dad was a Southern Baptist pastor, and then he worked for the Home Mission Board. My mother was always involved in the church, and also at one point was director of a Baptist center in Omaha, Nebraska, and she worked with poor people there, which was sort of my first experience with Native Americans and Latinos and other groups. But for me, the most important thing about my parents is that, first of all, they taught me God loves everyone. God loves you. God loves everyone. But then they had that therefore on it, which was you must love all people. And for them, they showed their love not only through saying you should love all people, preaching it, but they actually practiced it in their lives, and they were actual doers of faith, not just believers. Well, I had planned to go to the University of Denver on a vocal scholarship, but I developed vocal nodes and was not able to follow through that. So here it is, it's like April, and I don't have a place to go to college in 1964. So I said to my mom, look, I think I'll just see if I can't take the Nebraska Regent Scholarship. I want to go to the University of Nebraska. My mother said, no, that's not going to happen. You have 2 choices. You can either go to Georgetown, where your father went to school and where your brother is currently a student, or you can stay home and go to the University of Omaha. So I said, simple decision, I'm going to Georgetown. Well, there were a lot of professors that I really enjoyed at Georgetown who influenced me, but I honestly have to say that the most influential part of my education at Georgetown was the experience of being the editor of the Georgetonian, and that was by and large my greatest teacher. It also put me in contact with faculty, with Dean Fields and some other giants on the campus. But that was a huge teacher for me. It taught me about leadership, and it influenced me in ministry in that it first helped me to get in touch with the connection of faith and justice. And the 60s, of course, when I was at Georgetown, there were so many things going on, the civil rights movement, the peace movement, the women's movement, the free speech movement, all of these movements were going on. And as editor, I chose to write about those things, but in order to do that, I had to expand my own horizon, so to speak, and do some study and reflection. And I think having that experience of having the newspaper staff, which I was totally in charge of, having a paper that needed to come out once a week, whether we were ready or not. But mostly, I think it was for ministry, helping me to begin to understand how to connect my own faith with issues of justice in the world. I think a lot of things that I've gotten from Georgetown have stayed with me over the years. First of all, I think was learning about leadership. It was a small enough campus that you could be involved in a lot of activities, and then I, by default, became editor of the Georgetonian. I had that opportunity to learn about leadership, and actually there was a lot of freedom there, freedom to succeed and freedom to fail, and just a lot of freedom to learn. I also felt that it was really great that I could approach the faculty, and that approachability was quite excellent. I've stayed engaged with Georgetown through classmates of mine. Because I've lived a lot of different places and out of the state, it wasn't really convenient for me to visit the campus, but I have many enduring friendships from Georgetown, and I stay in touch with a lot of people that way. And now it's great, I do that on Facebook, and I'm really enjoying that. My dream for Georgetown College is that it will continue to move forward and be a place of liberal arts education. I think it's really, I can't overstate what I think the value is of a liberal arts education, particularly in our day and age. If you want to learn a trade, that's good. You can learn that. Go to vocational school, take classes. But nothing replaces a liberal arts education where we learn about history and a little bit about music and a little bit about art and a little bit about the theater, a little bit about science, where we learn about literature. And Georgetown always had such a tremendous focus on writing, which when I was there. And so my dream is that the value of the liberal arts education that Georgetown has provided for these many years, that will continue on and will continue to produce the kinds of people for our world that it has up to this point.